Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. This is our second show where we're talking about training camp preview. We're looking at the defensive side of the ball in this show. It's exciting times. We finally get to talk and see football, regular football, real football on the field, talk about what we're seeing, what we're reacting to as far as the play that is going on out there. It's always a fun time of the year, each year, when we finally get into camp and get a look at the players that we drafted for the first time. And so there's a lot of that on the defensive side this year. Welcome in.
Yeah. This isn't, I don't know, this is one of our favorite times of the year, this and draft. Because we've been talking about guys all off season. We've been talking about roster battles and how things are going to work out and what we expect, but now we get to actually see it. It's out on the field. I don't care if it's practice and not a game. It's football being played by actual players. And that makes it fascinating, especially this time of year when we've been without since February. So yeah, let's get out and watch some football practice and talk about it. I'm super excited. And today with the defense, we've got some definite things that you and I are going to be watching for.
Yeah.
And I think we can just start right at the top and just mention the return of Bobby Wagner and what does that look like, and how much of an impact will he make? Not can he make, will he make on that defense right in the middle of it?
So both of us independently bring our storylines in, top 5 storylines. This week it's the defense. Last show we did the offense. We both agreed the offense is going to be explosive and amazing. It'll be very interesting how this conversation goes, because as we go through this, there are definitely some question marks and holes on the defense that aren't apparent on the offense at all. And so it really kind of depends, I think, on this defense, how far we can go as a team. And you're right, it does start with the re-addition, if you will, of Bobby Wagner at middle linebacker into this defense. It was definitely one of those key signings, almost a foregone conclusion that Bobby Wagner, once released from the Rams, was going to be coming back to Seattle. It was just a matter of working that contract out. They did, came to an agreement on that. So, and they also added Devin Bush to that group as well, knowing that middle linebacker Jordan Brooks had an ACL at the end of the last season. Takes a 9-month rehab, which puts it about the first, second weekend of October before he might be ready. So the expectation is that he's not going to be ready on the PUP list. So Bobby Wagner in the middle there is going to be hugely important to this defense, and he's a good guy to have come back. I think we both agree that there's a little bit of diminished return as far as his playing ability, but the contract kind of helps with that, in that it's not a huge overbloated contract. It's somewhere in line with where he should be paid, and so that makes it easier for him to come back. I still think he's a high-end contributor. He's got last year 6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, over 130 tackles for his 7th straight season. So definitely still ability to contribute on a high end, but I think his importance to this defense transcends just stats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. He's a leader. He's the leader. He'll be a defensive captain. You'll be able to see his impact in terms of just communication and all of those things. He's a 7-time All-Pro for his statistical contributions, but he's far more than that. And even though he's lost a step or maybe 2 now, it doesn't change his instincts. It doesn't change his ability to be a very sure tackler. Just a
consummate pro.
Yeah, he's a pros pro. And first ballot Hall of Famer. And with all of that, like, of course the team's going to benefit with him coming in, even if it is not the not the guy that they had, in like 2013, 2014, in terms of being on top of everything, one of the faster linebackers in the NFL. And he's not that anymore, but he's still a really, really good player. We saw that last year when he was with the Rams. Like, the idea that he was, washed was a joke. Guy was again a Pro Bowl level player,
He was an
and to have
all-pro
him
last
back, yeah, and to have him back, and you know, everything he adds to the defense, like, it's going to be huge. But with that comes the problems beside him. You mentioned Jordan Brooks and his injury. Well, they don't have really anyone to cover for Brooks while we wait. What you've got is, Devin Bush, who was kind of a guy that washed out in Pittsburgh. And he's expected to come in and be the guy now for this team at the other linebacker spot. That's something that is kind of problematic. And so they really need to figure out what they're going to do with that. And, if he doesn't show that he can play, who do they have behind them?
Yeah.
The answer is no one.
So, let's list out everybody. So Bobby Wagner, Devin Bush, John Radigan, Vi Jones. Now, what I wanted to do is, I wanted to talk about this deeper question. Is that enough? Is that enough to get the job done while Jordan Brooks is out? And we just don't know. And I don't think that's going to be answered until the games are played. But here's what Pete Carroll said. He said, I think it's an exciting room when Jordan gets back out there with the fellas. It's an exciting room when Jordan gets back out there. Devin is an exciting football player, runs really well, versatile, all over the place, sideline to sideline guy. At least he used to be. We're gonna find out if that's still true after that knee operation. We got Bobby in the building, so that feels good. Structure-wise and leadership-wise and production, he had a terrific season last year. And our younger guys, getting John Radigan back. John is really back to full speed and bigger than he's ever been. We're anxious to see him. And Vi Jones is 10 pounds heavier.
Which is good.
Specifically to play middle linebacker for this team. Last year, he was more of an athletic guy that showed up. He's ready to go. And he's much more connected to the position because it was a little bit of a transition for him. He's talking about his weight. It's a very good group. We'll get a lot of play out there out of that, and we'll get a lot of special teams out of that group too. So that's Pete Carroll's way of saying, we like the group. It's solid. It looks like maybe the young guys are going to get an opportunity, and we'll see how it goes until Jordan gets back. And even when Jordan comes back, it's is he going to be 100%? Will he be full speed? Will it take him some time? So we may not see Jordan Brooks really be effective until maybe December.
Yeah. And I look at those comments, and what stands out is the Devin Bush, at least he used to be. That's an acknowledgement that the guy that they signed hasn't.
I said that.
Oh, I thought you were putting that in Pete Carroll's thing.
No, I didn't say. Pete Carroll did not say that. He said he's an exciting football player, runs very well, versatile, all over the place, sideline to sideline guy. He didn't say at least he used to be. I said
okay. So I thought he threw that in there. I'm like, that's really telling, because that's telling me that he doesn't truly believe in that. I'm like, wow, that's because Pete Carroll doesn't say those things unless there's something really big there.
Here's the deal. These guys are not stupid. Pete Carroll's a defensive guy. Clinton Hurt and him work together really closely. It's a good group. They evaluate really well. If they saw something on film last year with Devin Bush and they still brought him in, he passed the physical. There's a reason Devin Bush is here. There were other guys available in free agency that they could have probably added in a similar price point. And so I'm a little bit more optimistic, I think, than you are on him. Now, if you go out and you read all the Steeler websites as far as fans and what they had to say about Devin Bush, it's not flattering at all. But my hope is he gets here, he gets into this offense or defense. It's a new structure. He's got new people around him. He's got a fresh opportunity, fresh eyes. We'll see what happens.
Another off season of rehab on that knee. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think you and I are both skeptical, but we're not like, oh, he's going to be awful. I can't believe they did that. It was, we'll wait and see. It's not he's going to be back 100% to how he was as a rookie, but we're also not writing him off. I think it's safe to have it be a wait and see situation.
If I was John Radigan, if I was Vi Jones,
oh yeah,
this is about the best of an opportunity that you can have in the NFL to break through. And I would be looking for one of those two guys to kind of show in camp and flash and possibly work themselves into at least a nice little rotation role early in the season.
Yeah, I like the idea of Vi Jones being 10 pounds heavier and having committed the offseason to being a middle linebacker because he was undersized.
Puts him at about 238 now.
Yeah. If it's has him undersized, he was undersized before. He was more of an outside linebacker, trying to play inside linebacker. Didn't really have the pass rush skills to be an outside linebacker in a 3-4. It was more of a 4-3 will, and so it all works out, for him to have a chance to come in and win that job. Now, we talked about, Wagner losing some speed and stuff. Vi Jones has some speed. That kid's got some wheels. He's a very athletic guy.
Yeah.
And so if he can, now that he when he came out, he wasn't drafted because he didn't have a position, right? He was part safety, part linebacker, part pass rusher, but really just pass rushed with physical skills, not with any he
didn't have the length and all that stuff.
Yeah. So where does he play? So he was a special teams guy is how he was viewed in the draft process. Now he's a guy that has a chance to really earn a job. And that to me is exciting. And Radigan is a guy that I know this team loves. And they really had hopes for him last year. They thought he could push Nick Bellore to be that second linebacker and all of that. And then the injury happened. He ended up missing the entire season. And we'll see what he is like now that he's back. But it's just hard. It's hard for me because you've got Bobby Wagner, who is aging, and you've got 3 unknown quantities. There's no sure thing. And you need 2 guys.
And you're hoping one guy emerges. At least I am. And that's really it. I mean, that's where this position group is. It's not great. Jordan Brooks comes back. You feel really good about it, but Jordan Brooks comes back. You don't know where he's going to be at in his process as far as rehab. Is he going to come back? Are they going to let him come back before he's 100%? Just because they're desperate at the situation, for the situation, they're feel fine for him not being 100%, and sideline to sideline speed's just not there, but they feel pretty good. I personally wouldn't do that, but the team may view it differently if they're just in a situation, come mid-season and they need an infusion of help, and he's it. But he may not be 100% even throughout the rest of this season. It takes a while, 9 months at minimum. That's the minimum.
Well, and then there's more. It's not just the physical aspect of it. You got to trust that knee, right? You got to be able to go and plant and push off and really just trust it, and then trust it when you're in traffic and there's people on the ground, right? And
coming in mid-season is hard.
It is. It's hard to get because the later that you go, the less practice there is. The later in the season, it becomes much more walkthroughs and not a lot of practice. There's not a lot of opportunities for him to come in and tackle and hit and those kind of things to
And
get
everyone
his
else
body
around
ready.
you is not feeling it out at that point. Everyone else is like gunning to go, ready to go, operating on instincts. He's going to come back, haven't not played for almost a full year, and then just kind of get thrown in to, okay, here you go, full speed, boom. That's really hard to do. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. My next storyline was at defensive tackle, and stopping the run specifically. I wrote that down specifically because I think it transcends defensive tackle. I don't want to put it all on Cameron Young, but it's all on Cameron Young. At least right now on the roster, he's the only guy. They got a couple undrafted rookie free agents behind that. There's no veteran depth there. There's no depth. And so I hope that the team has a plan there, because I think it's almost too much to ask a guy like Cameron Young to come in and play 60% of the snaps from day one and not have really anybody else back there that you can depend on. So I wanted to have this conversation. We've talked about it a little bit in a few different other shows, but now that we're in training camp and we're actually going to see the plan, at defensive tackle, is Cameron Young the guy that they put in on first and second down? They don't really have anybody else because they don't need anybody else. They've already got him on the roster. And a guy like Jaron Reed that has the ability to slide inside. Mario Edwards has done that before. They're grooming Mike Morris, their draft pick from Michigan, to play in that role eventually as well. They've got Dre Jones. They do have some options, just not a big 330-pound space eater option on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, John Reed's kind of the name that sticks out to me, because that's what he did the first couple of years of his career. He was the nose tackle, and then they moved him over to 3-tech and turned him loose and earned him a really big contract with a couple of good pass rush seasons. Of course, he earned the contract with someone else, but you have a situation with him where he can do that job. He's not quite as big as you want, but he can do the job. And it might be a situation where if Cameron Young holds down the fort against the run, well, you don't want him in there against the pass anyway. You want someone who can get some push up field and generate some, a smaller pocket for the quarterback to work in. And maybe that's where Jaron Reed is that he slides over and he has that. It's the nose tackle job, but against the pass. But you brought up stopping the run, because what happens if Cameron Young gets hurt even in that role? Right now, you don't
is ineffective. We just don't know.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if he is effective, right? Even then, injury, that kind of stuff, you don't have a guy that can hold down that spot, and especially if the other team's running the ball right at you, trying to keep your offense off the field, you got to have that ability to stop the run, especially right up the middle.
We should say Brian Monet is on the roster. We just don't expect Brian Monet to be ready until mid-season because of his ACL.
At the earliest. Pete Carroll even mentioned that when you're his size, because he's 360 pounds, that rehabbing a knee injury is a lot harder than when you're not 360 pounds. So, and that his progress has been very slow. So I don't know if we can expect much from him this year. We'll see what happens.
Training camp's going to be interesting because there are a number of younger guys, Robert Cooper, Austin Faoli, and Jacob Sykes are there to compete in that backup role along with Jonah Tavai. They like Jonah Tavai, but he's undersized. He's more of that Jaron Reed kind of guy that's going to come in and be able to maybe come in on third down and operate from that position. And maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's the plan. He backs up Jaron Reed in that role. We shall see. Okay. Why don't you offer up your next storyline?
So my next storyline is simply entitled Jamal Adams.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Where is he at, like physically? How's the team plan on using him? Is he still viewed as an in the box quasi linebacker guy, despite the fact that now he has shown that his body maybe isn't built for that role, even though physically and his instincts and his ability to fly around and make plays, he's a 2-time All-Pro in that role, but he's starting to show that he is breaking down. He's just too small to be giving and taking those hits on every play. So are they going to ask him to be more of a safety and less of a linebacker? And if they do ask it out of him, can he do the job? Because he's not known for being a guy that can cover.
Yeah.
And so, how are they going to use him?
They have a plan. And the reason that I say that they have a plan is because they wouldn't have kept him on the roster at his salary number if they didn't. They've been talking about him all off season. They do have they're expecting him to be ready. I think by all accounts he's supposed to be ready for the opening of training camp, which means he needs to pass a physical on Wednesday. And if he does, he's going to be in there, and he's going to be a part of this planning in this defense and trying to figure out how he fits from the first day of training camp. If he doesn't pass a physical, Keith, on Wednesday, that's where the issues start to pile up for Jamal Adams and what the defense does. It kind of puts Seattle in a quandary what they do going forward. But I'm going to assume that he's ready to go. By all accounts, including Bob Condata, are indicating that he's going to be ready. So we'll see if they start him out slow on the pup just to bring him along slow. You can take him off that anytime throughout camp. So they can have an extra guy on the roster just to look at. But my expectation is that he's available and they just kind of work him in right from the beginning. And we'll see.
I mean,
it looks good on paper, obviously, with Jamal Adams, Julian Love, Diggs, some of the other younger guys they got, like Jerick Reed, that they drafted and they're just really high on. Joey Blount was there last year. A guy by the name of Jonathan Sutherland apparently is a name that we should all be familiar with right away in camp, because he's going to get an opportunity to have some reps too and take a look at special teams for a kid like that. But it is really all about Jamal Adams early in camp at the safety group.
Yeah. And I mean, it's weird because I was thinking about this. I'm like, you're mentioning the physical, and I'm like, it might, like, there's a possibility that him passing a physical is his ticket off the roster. Because we don't know the exact contract language. And the reason why they didn't move on from him when they could have, and they desperately could have used the cap relief, is that if he didn't pass a physical, they might have been on the hook for his whole salary, and which then would force them to not do so, because if his
so
contract
he had injury guarantees.
I don't know. I mean, everyone has injury guarantees, but what's the language of it? If his contract was fully guaranteed for injury, meaning that he got injured last year, this is a new year, but if he's still injured, can't pass a physical, they've got to pay him everything. Him passing a physical could be his ticket off the roster, because now they could cut him and not have to pay any of that. I don't think that's true. I think if you're going to hold on to a guy and you get him into camp, see what you got, right? Let's go see how it works. And all of that. So I think that's what we're talking about. But it did occur to me that that's a possibility, that the reason why they didn't move on from him in the offseason was because of contract language.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to look at it right now, but there's a lot.
There's a lot of stuff, and the thing is, oftentimes we don't have that. Like, it'll be guaranteed, for injury, but we don't know how much, right? How much of it is guaranteed? What is it? Fully guaranteed for injury? Is it up to a certain amount? Is it what's the language? Because it can vary from contract to contract. It's not something which is always set in stone.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. My next storyline is just the pass rush. I put, is the pass rush improved? If nothing else, it's completely overhauled. Additions include Draymond Jones, Dre Jones, Jerron Reed, and rookie draft pick Mike Morris on the inside, as well as Derek Hall on the outside. You've got returning players, Uchenna Nwasu, Darrell Taylor, Boye Mafe, Tariq Smith, who we haven't had a chance to look at yet, and Alton Robinson. All reports are indicating that Alton Robinson's not going to be ready to go. Starts the year on IR. That's what I'm hearing at this point. I know we've talked about it before, not knowing exactly where he's at. I've heard since that he's still, rehabbing at this point. So has it improved? I know that we had a pretty good pass rush last year. I think we had 46 sacks. We were top 12 pressure rate, et cetera. We had even more sacks than San Francisco 49ers, who have a great front seven. So I don't think it was necessarily just the pass rush, but something was just amiss there where our defense was very poor, particularly against the run and defending the pass. It doesn't seem like it should have been that way, but we were ranked 26th overall for a reason. Points allowed, yards allowed. So
well, I think the sacks stat is misleading. And yeah, they were able to get home, but part of that was because of Tariq Woolen, Quandre Diggs, and Mike Jackson on the back end. Like there were a lot of coverage sacks in there, the extra time given, and the team's ability to turn pressure into sacks was at a abnormally high rate. They didn't get pressure very often. There were a lot
of those came on too. I will say, I think they were close to like 32 or 34 sacks with 6 to 7 games to go. And they really bumped that up. 20 sacks in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. Darrell Taylor, found his footing and gave them, 9.5 sacks in 8 games. So, that had a lot to do with it too. But yeah, I mean, it was a situation where, I don't think the sacks is telling of the whole thing, because there were far too many plays where there was no pressure whatsoever.
So both of us expect this defense to be improved incrementally or big steps. Talk to me about your thoughts on just the front, the 3-4 plus the rush guys. And the ability to get to the quarterback, affect the pocket, affect timing, give our back end, further opportunities to either bat passes down or get that turnover or whatever. Where do you think the improvements are going to come from this part of the defense?
Well, the improvements are going to come from Drummond Jones over a guy like Quentin Jefferson. At that 5 tech of the 2 defensive ends. You've gone from a guy that was, mediocre to a guy that's one of the best in the NFL. And that's going to be a big change. On the other side, okay, Shelby Harris was extremely effective last year. One of the only guys that was extremely effective. But Jerron Reed's abilities and his track record suggest that he'll be able to come close to matching what Shelby Harris did. And then overall, with the other guys that they've added, to be able to have more of a NASCAR package against in 3rd and long, where now you've got Jerron Reed as a nose tackle instead of a 3 tech, and you bring in a smaller, faster, like pass rush specialist.
Like Derek Hall.
Yeah. And you've got those guys, and you've got so much speed on the outside. Hall can play outside linebacker with Nwasu and Taylor and Boye Mafe, and maybe it's one of those situations where you take out Bush and you bring in a 3rd linebacker pass rusher. That's where Hall comes in, and now you've got 3 guys coming from the line. So you've basically got a blitz package style up where your front 3 and your back 3, and everyone except for Wagner, and Wagner can rush and can blitz too. And so but basically you've got it set up where now you've got guys coming from all angles. You've got specialized pass rushers that are also blitzers. You know what I mean? Like you can schematically do more because you've got more pieces.
And Jamal Adams, just throw that into the equation as well. That first year Jamal was with the team, he had 9+ sacks. It's an exciting group. I mean, there's a lot of potential here. I will say there's some proven stuff. Drummond Jones, Jerron Reed, Nuasu and Darrell Taylor, I think, have been consistent enough where we know what we're going to get from those guys. It's these other pieces that I think are really exciting. Mike Morris, we don't know exactly what he's going to be able to give, but I would imagine he's going to get an opportunity. Derek Hall, I think, is part of this equation. We just don't know yet. Everyone's kind of saying, well, he's not quite ready for the pass rush in the NFL. He needs some more moves. He's got that bull rush down, but we'll see. Who knows? But then, everyone's talking about the opportunities that Boye Mafe has in his repertoire now that hasn't really yet been seen by us. But we know he's got him. He had him coming into the team last year. They just had him as more of a in run fits last year. And then Tariq Smith is kind of the unknown quantity here. Team seems really high on him. I'm hearing a lot of good things, good reports out of mini camps and so forth, that he's going to get a real opportunity as well. And somebody's going to be outside looking in because there's a lot of young guys here that are going to be able to rush the passer. Who's going to get those snaps?
Yeah, so Tariq Smith, for those people who don't recognize the name, was a 7th-round draft pick a year ago.
Fifth round.
I thought he was okay.
Out of Ohio State.
But yeah, he's a guy that really impressed in rookie minicamp, OTAs, all that kind of stuff. Team was like, "Whoa, this kid's better than we thought." And then he came in. He got like 2 practices in training camp and got hurt and missed the rest of the year. He's essentially like getting another draft pick this year because he's kind of an unknown, except for the team is super excited because of what they saw, and he's fully healthy because it was so early in this in the process last year. He's fully healthy. He's been there for all these OTAs and mini camps,
weight room, etc. Full off.
Yeah, and they're watching him going, yeah, this is the exciting thing that we remember, and they are still really high on him, and they're super excited to have him. If he doesn't, blow out a knee and is just healthy, he could be a real surprise as essentially an extra draft pick because they got nothing from him last year. Like they didn't get to see him through a week of practice. Is
there a danger of one of those guys we've been talking about not making the roster because it's so crowded?
I don't know. It would be hard. I mean, Alton Robinson is a guy that if he didn't rehab in Seattle, he didn't put the work in at the team facility, all of that. He was doing it off on his own. At one point there was concern because there wasn't much communication between him and the team. If that never got changed, that kind of stuff, he's a guy that is tenuous. And we'll see what happens with him. All the rest of these guys, I think someone has some unknown undrafted rookie or someone was going to have to come in and blow them out of the water for one of these guys to not make it because there's just enough spots for guys. But they're going to be really deep at the position. Now, are there guys that never get on the field because there's too many people at that spot? Probably. They're like, Tariq Smith might be a guy that just can't get on an active game day roster because there's just too many people above him on the depth chart. But they're going to carry. They're going to carry probably 6 guys at the position. And I think they've got 6 guys at the position. So they're right where they want to be in terms of they've got a lot of guys and all of them are good. And it fills out the depth chart real nicely.
So we've talked about 4 storylines: linebacker, defensive tackle, safety, and now the pass rush.
Last
what
one
could possibly be left to talk about?
I mean, it's corner, but for me specifically, it's Mike Jackson because a kid came in, complete unknown, won the job over a couple of veterans that the team had brought in to hold down that spot. Played well, maybe not spectacularly, but they didn't really. I mean, they asked him to do certain things, and he did them incredibly well. Overshadowed by Tariq Woolen, but fine, whatever.
Started every game.
Played well. The team went out and drafted using the 5th overall pick a guy to replace him. And he says, hell no, I'm not losing my job. I fought too hard as an undrafted player, a practice squad guy, to finally get my opportunity. I made the most of that opportunity. I played really well. I am not giving up my job. And he has worked his tail off to try and hold on to that job.
Here's what Pete Carroll had to say.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson's had the best camp of anybody, said Coach Pete Carroll after last month's mini camp. He had a great camp. He's stepped up for the challenge of it. He's just a really productive, almost a dominant camp for us. Almost a dominant camp. And so that was great to see that. We need it. His confidence is really at an all-time high for him.
Yeah. I mean, that's
almost dominant camp.
That is such that's a statement. Damn. But for him to come in and to say, you know what, rookie, I'm not giving you my job, even though that rookie was the 5th overall pick. And honestly,
right.
Witherspoon's a special player. He's a special talent.
Yes, he is. And so is Tariq Woolen. Reek.
Yeah.
He wants to go by Reek now.
Yeah.
But both those guys are amazing. And then Michael Jackson. What if Michael Jackson ends up being, just because he works his ass off harder than anybody else, ends up being the best cornerback of the group because he's just wants it so bad.
Well, I think everybody wants it bad, but there is talent there. I mean, the guy's huge. He's a great tackler. He does all the little things. And if he has improved his play recognition and his footwork and things that will make him a better corner, better in coverage, like, okay, so, but how does that fall in terms of playing time, right? Does your 5th overall pick come in off the bench as your slot? That would be like,
right.
and that would be like, how?
Not because of anything he's done wrong.
Yeah, but just because there's so much talent in front of him.
And so here's the deal. Here's the outside corner room. Woolen, Witherspoon, Jackson, Trey Brown, Artie Burns. Here's the slot nickel corner room. Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant, Trey Brown, as well as Julian Love and Jarek Reed from the safety room can come in and play that spot. This is so crazy. What a great problem to have if you're the Seahawks. It's not a great problem if you're one of those players that are fringy. You don't have your starting spot locked up, whatever, but good for the team because competition is going to win this job. And it might change week in, week out. I know they want to have continuity there, but goodness gracious. I mean, or something's got to happen. A log jam's got to break. Trades, somebody's going to get cut that's going to be a surprise and immediately picked up for another team and, have playing time immediately. Something's got to happen with this room because it's just, there's too many players.
And like I was saying, the Mike Jackson element, if he doesn't win that starting job, what does that mean as far as like the nickel? Does Witherspoon move inside in the nickel just to get Mike Jackson on the field because he's earned it? And so, okay, yeah, it's Woolen and Witherspoon on the outside, but it's also Woolen and Jackson on the outside with Witherspoon in the nickel. Like that's another option, is that you have a shifting who's playing on the outside there, and that puts more on the rookie's plate to have to handle both the outside responsibilities on some plays and the nickel responsibilities on others. Do they want to do that to him? Like, you know what I mean? So there's lots of different things here, but it's all good problem to have problems, right? It's so much talent.
Yeah.
I think about a couple of years ago, Trey Brown came in, mid-season, and just impressed. Was like, wow, this kid who held on every play in college can actually cover and looked really good. And now he's like almost an afterthought because of how good Jackson's been and the fact that they drafted Woolen and Bryant after him. And now they've drafted Witherspoon, right? They've drafted 3 corners since Trey Brown emerged. And he was good as a rookie.
So what's your prediction? Is there going to be a trade or is there going to be a compromise? Because you don't. Witherspoon is so good. I don't think people understand this. You said it. He's a special player. Witherspoon is so good at what he does that you can't not have him on the field. Like, even if he only comes in on as a nickel corner on third down, that's not good enough. That's leaving an asset off the field that is one of your best players. Just because you want to get Michael Jackson reps because he's earned it. Something to me can't hold up here long term. Something's got to give. And that's why I think a guy like Michael Jackson gets traded, or a guy like Trey Brown gets traded.
I think a guy like Trey Brown or Kobe Bryant gets traded. I don't think Mike Jackson does unless the offer is really good.
Like a third round pick.
Yeah. What I think you end up with is a situation where you play the nickel lot and you take a guy like Devin Bush off the field, because why wouldn't you?
Because Michael Jackson's such a good tackler anyway.
Yeah. So unless Devin Bush shows that he's a different player than he was in the last couple of years in Pittsburgh, you take him off the field, you play the nickel for a lot of your downs, so that way you get all three of those corners on the field all the time.
What do you do with guys like Jarek Reed and Julian Love, who they've already said are going to be nickel guys? I mean, it's crazy. You know, out of all the guys that we just mentioned, the worst tackler on this back end is Tariq Woolen. And he's one of the most physical guys, on this defense.
Well, and that's the thing, is he's incredibly physical, but it was more of a technique issue as far as his tackling. He missed tackles because of not wrapping up and not having his hands in the right spot and things like that. These are coachable, fixable things, right? This is one of those things coming out of, UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio, making that massive
things.
Massive jump.
So well.
The massive jump from there to the NFL, like the work they had him put in, the things they wanted him to do, the work around coverage and those kind of responsibilities, didn't really give time for putting in the work on becoming a better tackler in terms of technique. They lived with the fact that he was just physical and not skilled in that realm. But now he's got another offseason. Now he's got another training camp. They're going to work with him on those things. I expect him to be better, is basically all I'm saying.
I do there's too, no especially surrounded by all these other guys that can tackle. I mean, Witherspoon and Jackson and Trey Brown and Kobe Bryant, Julian Love, all those guys can
Quandre Diggs.
Yeah, right? Tackle with the best of them.
So, the back end, the umbrella of the defense, right? The corners and the safeties, and even, including the slot, is the strength of this defense. Is it Legion of Boom ish? I don't think so, because they're not all guys that are huge for the position. I mean, Tariq Woolen is, but that's about it. But it's still the strength. They've gone and intentionally drafted and developed and signed guys to be where the back end can be seriously dominant. And there's more guys than there is spots on the field. It's the one, them and outside linebacker are the two spots where they've got both talent and depth. The rest of the defense,
at the offensive side too, it's wide receiver. But yeah,
I mean, I'm sorry, just in terms of defense, it's the outside linebacker and the back end of the defense. They've got talent and depth. The rest of the defense has talent but no depth, except for defensive tackle, like nose tackle, where we don't know what they have, if they have either. It comes down to Cameron Young, and is he good enough to say that they have talent there? But the back end is great, and
will win games for this team.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will generate turnovers with this defense, and
generate turnovers, but also generate fourth downs because of their ability. You know what I mean? Like, they'll generate sacks because of their ability to cover, and not the quarterback won't have a place to go, so he'll have to pull the ball back down. That gives the pass rush another second to get home. Right? They'll generate sacks. They'll generate fourth downs by their ability to get to the ball or force bad throws.
I'm just looking for the swagger equation on this defense just went up, just doubled with Witherspoon coming in, and then Michael Jackson coming in with this much confidence. It's this group is going to be something. I mean, this is to me, this is the biggest storyline on the defense, and there's a few good ones that you're going to be watching for to key improvement. What we consider improved play over last year, but this competition, I think, is the biggest storyline, just because it's going to be so alpha. I mean, the Witherspoon Jackson thing. Woolen's there, we know that, but you've got Trey Brown. He's fighting for a spot. Artie Burns is a seasoned veteran, probably just laughing in the corner, waiting for somebody to get injured because that's the only way he's got an opportunity. And Julian Love coming in, he's kind of an alpha guy, a leader on a defense. Jarek Reed apparently is just got a chip on his shoulder coming in. There's going to be some popping and hitting from this defense this year.
Why did Artie Burns re-sign with Seattle? I get why Seattle would want to bring him in because they hadn't drafted
Witherspoon yet.
They hadn't drafted Witherspoon yet, and they wanted some veteran, just like leadership and calmness especially in the film room, to help teach and that kind of stuff. So it makes sense from Seattle's point of view to have him. But if you're Artie Burns, why are you signing that contract and not going to some place where you have at least a path to the field?
Yeah. Maybe it's not about football anymore for Artie Burns. It's about the culture and the opportunity and the learning, and maybe he wants to be a coach someday. I don't know. I mean, you would think he'd have a better opportunity somewhere. He's a former first-round draft pick. But
played well with the Bears.
There's something about playing on one of the best secondaries in football and getting cut. You may have an opportunity that way to make a roster somewhere else as well, go through camp with Seattle, end up somewhere else. I don't know. There's a strategy there. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that confused me from the moment it happened. And like I said, not from Seattle's point of view. This is a good player. Former first-round pick, was a good player for the Bears.
Hung around the team last year all season. Didn't play now.
Didn't. I thought he played two.
Okay, two.
But didn't play last year, which was kind of unexpected at the beginning of the year because you were like, he was hurt in camp, and that gave Mike Jackson a chance to grab the job, but you'd expect the veteran to come in and push that, get himself back on the field, all of those things, and never did. And okay, it happens. Go somewhere where you can have a path to the field, have a prove it deal, get out there, prove that you're still the guy that you were in Chicago, go earn yourself a contract. And instead he came back to Seattle, which he really didn't have a path.
Quickly.
Yeah, he really didn't have a path to the field then, unless injury. And now even less so because they went and drafted Witherspoon.
Yeah.
So, and maybe
he's a press cover corner guy. I mean, he's not a slot guy. He's not going to play in the slot.
Nope. He's an outside
guy.
Yep.
And
he's sixth on the depth chart at outside corner.
Yeah. Yeah. They're really counting. He's counting on the team carrying 6 and only 4 safeties. And that may in fact well be what they end up doing. But that would mean a guy like Joey Blount, a guy like Jonathan Sutherland's outside looking in.
I would say Joey Blount's probably got a better shot at the roster than Artie Burns because
I would have thought so last year as well. And
special teams.
Year,
yeah. If it's a choice between those two, I think Blount makes the roster because of his special teams play. And it's just a weird situation. Maybe it's a situation where we're talking about trade where if Artie Burns shows well in camp and shows well in preseason, that a team that needs a corner wouldn't mind a veteran over a guy like Trey Brown, who's had half a good season. Is willing to throw him a 6th-round pick for him, something like that. But it's it's a weird spot for him to be in.
Fun conversation. There's, between the offense and the defense, there's a lot to like. Love this cornerback room. Love the safety room, especially if Jamal is healthy. If he's healthy, that back end is one of the best back ends in football, really. And then you take a look at the upside on the pass rush. If Bobby Wagner is playing really well, and Bush comes along and plays over expectation, Cameron Young plays well, this defense is going to improve. Now, they were 26th last year. I've talked about them potentially reaching a ceiling of being like the 12th ranked defense in the NFL. They would have to, get more turnovers. They would have to stop teams converting on third down at a much higher rate.
Mm-hmm.
They would have to keep teams from marching up and down the field and scoring, obviously. And I think the opportunity is there. They would have to incrementally improve, not just incrementally, but a nice little bump, about 20% improvement, I think, in those statistical categories I just talked about. It could get them vaulted up close to the top 10, but it would take a huge push. Everything would have to work. We know the back end's going to be really good for this defense, but everything else has to work, especially stopping the run, I think is key for this defense. And I don't know exactly where they're going to get that from, which is a huge question mark for me.
Yeah. I'm also another question mark is the defensive coaching staff. Because last year's team had the talent.
Yeah, you're right.
It should have been better, and it wasn't. I was worried going into the year about the too many cooks in the kitchen type of situation with guys like Sean Desai that were there but not the coordinator, but had coordinator-like responsibilities. There were also there's also the actual coordinator. There's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, including Pete Carroll. And Sean Desai's gone now. He went and took a defensive coordinator position elsewhere. Good for him. Like, he has earned that. And hopefully now streamlining things, it ends up with a better scheme fit situation. But we'll see. I mean, I still have questions. I really do.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I like Clint Hurt. I think he's competent. I like their, the secondary coach. I like that they have a new pass rush specialist, which they haven't had before, in BT Jordan. That'll be interesting. And with Bobby Wagner coming back and Julian Love addition, I think those are really big. And then Draymond Jones, I think that's enough. That's enough to vault them, I think, from 26th to 15. And we'll see if that's enough to get them further into the playoffs, because I really do think they need a fast start, but it's how you finish this year as well, and how you get through that one stretch of games where they've got Cincinnati and the Eagles and the
49ers twice.
49ers. Yeah, that's a big stretch there. And if they can overcome those, get 500 through there, start the year 4-0, 5-0, get to the bye with, say 4-1, and then get through that stretch, this team has a chance to win a playoff game and maybe two, get to the NFC Championship game. You just don't know. But this team is really close to that level, which I can't believe I'm even talking about, because I thought we were at least a year away from that. And I think that they've done enough. They had a nice offseason. If the draft turns out like the 2022 draft, this team's set up really well for like the next 3 or 4 years. Just really, really well. So
I have some concerns about the defense, about the nose tackle, about middle linebacker. Middle linebacker's not named Bobby.
And after this season, they don't have anything.
Yeah.
Literally nothing.
Because both the starters are on 1-year deals. So I have definite questions and some reservations with the defense. I don't really about the offense, except for maybe the offensive line, if none of the additions pan out as significant improvements. But we're talking about improvement on an offense that was already good and has more talent at position players, even if the offensive line it was just a lateral change, you know what I mean? So it should still be better. And I have more confidence in Shane Waldron and that offense than Clint Hurt. I like Clint Hurt, but I want to see him have a defense that lives up to the talent, which it didn't last year.
Yeah. He pretty much came out and said, I guarantee that this defense is going to be improved this year.
I hope so.
I hope so. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. This show is SeahawksPlaybook.com. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere on our own YouTube channel, Seahawks Playbook Podcast on YouTube. When you find it, hit that subscribe button and it'll show up in your feed every show. So until next time, take care and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.